Hi there. Let me introduce you to the Unified Corpus Explorer, a tool that makes your data tangible. The general idea is simple. UCE imports your corpus, be it biology books, finance documents, legal texts, or parliament speeches, it really doesn't matter, and it creates your very own web gateway to this data, complete with a variety of features. Even better, UCE imports AI-powered annotations such as named entities and sentiment and builds its features around that data. The only prerequisite, your data needs to be in the standardized UIMA format for UCE to import it. But don't worry, we have tools to do exactly that while even performing a wide variety of AI analysis in the process and supporting numerous data formats. But enough preamble, let's dive straight into some UCE demonstrations. Now what you see here is one UCE instance. If you have a look at the corpora, we have several corpus imported into this UCE instance. We have biodiversity data, we even have some German parliament speeches in here. So we have different data sources in here, and UCE has built automatically this web interface around that. If we go over here, we can get to the heart of UCE, which is its search engine. As you can see here on the top, we can select different corpora we wanted to search through. So I'm going to select another one. And as you can see here, we have around 2000 documents in here, and I can now leverage UCE's search engine. So if I click here and open the search documentation, there are different ways we can search through UCE. There's a standard full text search, which supports the regular or parameters, or maybe not. But there's also something called the Pro mode, which is much more advanced, which leverages some specific syntax, so you can build your very specific search queries. And there's some other layered searches, which I will show you in a second. But let me demonstrate this. So I could search for Deutschland, for example, but this is too simple for me. So I go ahead and I use an AND operator, and I'm looking specifically for Germany and Abstimmung in combination. And if I select the Pro mode, this will be automatically parsed to the database as an AND operator. Now, and I can do this however much I want it. So I can even go ahead and say, well, I'm looking for Präsident and Abstimmung and Bayern, and it gives me the search results for those. And I could even go ahead and say, well, I'm interested in Präsident and specifically not in Abstimmungen. So this would give me those documents that have President and specifically not Abstimmung in them. And if you found a document which you found interesting, you can, of course, read through every single document. So I'm going to open the document reader right here, and we get a different view. And as you can see here, this is, for example, one of the parliament speeches from 1867, and you can read every single text. And this highlighting, I will explain just in a second what this does. We have some couple of visualizations here, and one of the main points of UCE is that the search and every feature around it builds around UIMA annotations. So let me show you a different search. If I go ahead and select the embedding search right here, and this is specifically useful if I'm not familiar with the exact search term I'm looking for, but I can more like phrase the thing I want to look for. So for example, here I'm going to go ahead in German, but this would also work in English. Probleme mit Tabaksteuer, so problems with tobacco taxes. And I will probably not find a document through the normal full text search because this is a very weird combination. But through the embeddings, I do in fact do an embedding search, and I do get the results I'm looking for. Now let's talk about these annotations I keep mentioning. So as you can see here, we are in a different UCE instance right now because it also looks different because you can adjust the way UCE looks to match your specific corpora. So in this instance, I only have one corpus, which is a biodiversity corpus. And if I just go over here to the lexicon, this will list you all the annotations which were done in pre-processing and which UCE imports and enhances its searches and its features with. So you can see here a complete lexicon of this whole corpus. And if you can see here, for example, this corpus was annotated with geoname annotations. So this means it will automatically tag and extract every single location mentioned in this whole corpus. And if you were, for example, only looking for locations, you can simply, for example, disable all these other annotations. And what you can see here is now every annotation which exists in geoname mentioned within the corpus for your convenience to have a look at, and you can get the exact mentioning of these occurrences within the text, and you can read through it and find and enhance your searches through that. So this is something that is also very dynamic and which can be decided by you. So for example, since this is a biodiversity corpus, we also have taxonomic recognition of species. So for example, we have a tool called the gazetteer taxon, which recognizes different taxa in the whole corpus, and also GN finder taxon, for example. So there are different annotations which all do the same. For this specific instance, they try to find mentionings of animal species within this corpus. And you can not only go through them in the lexicon, but if I jump to the search engine over here, you can firstly see that the look is also a bit different. We have a lot more metadata to each of these documents in here. And you can inspect, of course, every single document through our underlying wiki edition through this wiki page. So every single annotation, every single document, every single entity has its own specific wiki page, which links it back to its document, what kind of metadata it has, and other spaces which you can explore and find. Now, what can we do with all these different annotations we have? So for example, in this corpus, since we have taxonomic annotations, we also have an enrich button over here. So if I were to look for a specific species, for example, I can search this species by its one name. And what you can see over here are a lot of matches from names which weren't in our search query. Why is that? Because through these taxonomic annotations, we know this is a specific species and we have an underlying ontology behind this. So we can figure out its alternative names, maybe even its subspecies, and UCE automatically enhances its search to find all those references of this species. What I want to show you is that UCE leverages the annotations, which is specifically tailored to each of the annotation to enhance your usability and making the corpora tangible. So if I wanted to put this to the real test, I can go ahead and make something like this. I can combine the pro mode syntax and I can use specific commands, which I will explain to you in a second, and I will search, for example, for these specific instances. So what happens here is that 𝗶𝘁𝘁 is being recognized as a taxonomic name, so it will be enriched by more alternative names. We have the operator, and what I have here are specific commands, which are also explained to you in the specific search doc history. But to be quick, since we have geonames annotations, but only if we do. If we don't have them, you cannot use these commands. If we do, then you can specifically call LOC and say, I'm looking for T. In here, T stands for the geoname abbreviation code for mountains. So really what I'm looking for here is any mentioning of the species 𝗶𝘁𝘁 or its subspecies or its alternative names, and a mentioning of any mountain terrain. And I'm not specifically looking for the mentioning of Kügelheim followed by Rühenhardt. So imagine this, you have a corpus which have a lot of mentionings of specific 𝗶𝘁𝘁 species within one specific location, but they are always cluttered by this one instance where it's the same book about Kügelheim or Rühenhardt or something similar. You can really like pinpoint and manage and use all these different syntax queries and annotations and commands. There are lots more which are listed always here. You can open the document reader again and you can get all these text, and now these underlying annotations here are also being annotated and shown within the document reader. For example, this is highlighted in green, the Museum Senckenberg. So if I open this, I get the wiki page of this specific location found by our previous AI annotations. Now we have one more search feature that you can leverage through these annotations enabled. So over here you have something called the layered search. What does this do? It specifically uses annotations previously done and leverage them to pre-filter your search queries. So for example, I can add a new layer and I can say I want to first filter all of my data for a specific time date. So for example, I can say something like, I am only interested in documents which mention or are in the time frame of 1890 to 2000, and I can apply this and it will go now search through this and it still finds 2500 documents, which is great. Now I can add another layer which will be an AND concatenation, and I will now filter based on these specific documents. I will now also say, okay, I'm only interested also in specific locations, and you can click on this and you can say pretty much, okay, I'm interested in Germany, in Deutschland. So I will make this maybe even specific parts. Maybe I'm only interested in Frankfurt am Main and area. Then I will apply this and now filtered only on 1,180 documents. So this means that you can now apply this for the search, and you will, whatever you put into the search field up here, it will only be applied on those already pre-filtered document pools. Now, we have one more way you can talk, and I mean literally talk, with your data through UCE. And that is, of course, via an AI assistant. So for example, I've already gone ahead and do this. You can open the Chatbot assistant over here. And you can ask, for example, for specific mentionings or specific informations. Here I ask for documents about birds, and he will scour through the corpus for you, so you don't even have to formulate your queries anymore. And it will show you these found documents, and you can now talk with this. So for example, it found a few documents which talk about birds, and I can say summarize the information from you, and it will do exactly this. And you can therefore talk and use this AI Chatbot to really engage with your underlying data. Okay, now let's talk visualization. So what you see for now is the search engine. You can see that you can read through every document. You can find these Wikipedia pages for everything. You have a lexicon where you can find specific mentionings of annotations and whatnot. But we also offer, of course, based on these annotations as well, more visualizations. So for example, on here, we are back to this biodiversity corpus. We have a map. And what it shows you is specific mentionings of species in combination with a location and in combination with a specific time mentioning. Now, how and why can we do this? We can do this because we have first annotated a specific species. So we found out this text is referencing a species. Then we have the geoname annotations which tell us, okay, in the same sentence with a reference, this is being talked about in a specific location. And then we also have time annotations for this specific corpus. So we have triplets of information that are a three-dimensional space which tell us this species at that time at this place. And you can now go through a 2D map interface and simply go through Germany, for example, and scour down and find specific mentionings of taxonomic species at a specific location mapped to a specific time. And I just wanted to show you that how we leverage these annotations and we make those visualizations based on these annotations. And UCE makes it dynamic. You wouldn't have this map if you didn't have a geoname annotation, a time annotation, and a taxonomic annotation. But since you do, in this specific instance, you have this map and you have this possibility of interacting with this. And we have a wide variety of different visualizations based on your annotations, which are dynamically built. Now, UCE has a lot more to offer, but why tell you when you can simply use it yourself? We have a dedicated documentation page that explains all aspects of UCE, alongside running demos for you to check out. And when in doubt, feel free to contact us. Now, thank you for listening and goodbye.